Exodus is a brand new franchise being started by the people over at Archetype Entertainment, more notably being the makers of the video game with the same name that people have been calling the spiritual successor to Mass Effect. And now, before the game even launches, we have a full novel set in its universe. Written by none other than sci-fi writing legend Peter F. Hamilton, which is called Exodus the Archimedes Engine. This book isn't just a tie-in to the franchise though, it expands the lore, introduces some key events, and sets the stage for what's happening in an entirely different part of the Centauri cluster 150 years after the game's story. In this video series, starting off with this video of course, I will be giving my thoughts on every single chapter that the book has in a chapter by chapter basis, with full spoilers ahead from video to video. Exploring its biggest reveals, hidden details, extrapolation on what it could mean for the overall game and our theories regarding it, along with how it connects to the overall universe of Exodus. This is also a great way for me to put all of my notes on the book to use, and refresh myself for when the second book in the duology finally releases later this year. If you're curious about the franchise's universe, its characters, and the mysteries it holds, then you are in the right place, since I'm not only covering the book in this fashion, but I also have a ton of theory, speculation, and breakdown videos on everything Exodus here on the channel. I even have a podcast where me and my co-host on there talk everything Exodus as well, if that interests you. But getting back on topic, as a quick disclaimer before actually starting the series, I have currently made it to chapter 4, but I'll still be starting the chapter breakdowns in separate videos from chapter 1 onwards. Also, I will mostly be hearing the book through the audiobook version, and the last time I read for fun was back in high school, so please excuse me if I don't comprehend something completely. Sometimes I could be a bit slow in that department. Also, during my listening of the book, if there is something I'm completely lost on in terms of words or terms exclusive to the Exodus universe, I make sure to go to the Exodus game wiki to try and comprehend the subject matter a little better. So huge shout out to the Exodus wiki team. But without further ado, let's get into my thoughts and breakdown of chapter 1 for Exodus the Archimedes Engine. First on up, I just want to say that this chapter was very weird for me for a ton of reasons. One, like I stated before, this is my first time reading a book for the first time since high school, so being dropped literally head first in their opening was so confusing for me. I kept rereading some of these sentences, hoping to understand why we were in this situation, not knowing in later chapters this situation would be explained in more depth, although I probably should have just realized this from the start. And two, there was a very dramatic tone shift I felt like between the scenes with Finn and the scenes with the Archons discussing the planet's movements. They felt like two entirely different worlds, and I do feel like that's what Peter was going for, but the contrast felt so jarring at first. But upon the second scene shift of going back and forth, it felt almost natural even. I don't know if this is just the effects from me just not reading for a long time, but either way, it was another reason why I just felt so confused at the start of the book. And lastly, 3, I was actually very surprised the Archon part felt so political. I personally actually do kind of love seeing political games like these play out from this perspective, but it wasn't what I was expecting the initial introduction to a Celestial to be like. Especially after learning about some of them from excerpts on the official site for Exodus and the like. All of these factors sent me for a whirl, but by the time the chapter was coming to an end, everything just seemed so natural. And since then, I've been cruising by pretty well chapter to chapter, so overall I think it's a good opener and provides some really interesting information. Some of which being a teaser to how mind lines work for the Crown Dominion. I also went to the wiki to see more of what it entails, especially when coming across the part about Bloodstone, and I found it so interesting. Wearing the Bloodstone out of tradition more than a necessity, and it progressively getting more and more impactful on your body and going all around it as you age, is a very interesting concept. And then also having a chosen, essentially, child for the mind line traveling alongside you, even though you will eventually just be taking over their body, seems so cult-like to me. Like if they were brainwashed through tradition or socially accepted norms in the Crown Dominion to feel honored to be a chosen as a host. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who feels it's kind of unsettling. It also brings into question whether or not the original host is completely gone or not once the mind line happens. Is there ever a sign or a way for the host to come back into possession of the body, or are they just essentially dead? I think we'll learn more about the process as it unfolds in the story, but upon initial looks on mind lines, they make me very suspicious of what they are truly for and who they really benefit, to say the least. Since it seems like this is just a way for influential people to have eternal life essentially, and they've brainwashed their societies to accept and even revel in being chosen. They also mention in this part that the Heresy Dominion doesn't partake in mind lines and that they live about 500 to 600 years, which is pretty insane to think about. Not only that, but from the wording, if I remember correctly, Mikhail Yalbo hints that this is less than the normal amount of years for Crown Dominion Celestials, meaning Crown Dominion Celestials live even longer than that. Mikhail Yalbo also mentioned the Heresy Dominion felt they were superior to Crown Dominion Celestials because they thought themselves more evolved and farther removed from their original origin of the human species, which I found very interesting. It lines up from what we know about Celestials seeing humans as massively inferior from the official site for the game. Mikhail mentioning they have a fragile alliance also of course calls into question the Heresy Archon's real reason for giving them the information of the moving gas giant planet, which I'm sure will be exposed later into the book into having an even more important role to play than we even think at the current moment. Because as they mentioned in their conversation, this gas giant moving into their system is a giant political move in its own way all on its own. Moving over back to Finn, his part already feels more adventurous and unfortunate at the same time. Having him tumbling down to a planet head first, and then also being able to maneuver with the construct intelligence that interacted with him, felt second nature to him in this opening scene. Having him in a dire situation from the jump had me insanely interested in what got him there in the first place, feeling a little bad at his situation, and having him get his ribs seemingly broken along with everything else made me feel actually super sorry for him. Luckily, him running into Ellie seems to be his first stroke of good luck, and with her help and getting back to their makeshift camp, he does his first interaction with some livestone, where if I remember correctly, he says he has to connect with a bulb to do, which just instantly reminded me of the James Cameron Avatar movies, with how the Na'vi are able to interact with their home world through these strands that come from their hair, and they can connect them with the planet and environment around them to be essentially one with nature and have unique interactions while doing so. With him working the Livestone to make a mini warm hideout for him and his new allies leading into the next chapter, it felt like a good way to get the reader, if they aren't too familiar with Livestone as of yet, to be gripped and interested on how the main character would be able to do that. Having someone who's human other than humanity's last hope, being June Aslan from the game, also being able to control Livestone had me very curious as to how Finn was able to do this, and if this feature is exclusive to him in the book. Since as of now, before the game is fully released, apparently only a couple of humans, June included, are supposed to be able to manipulate and use Livestone and interact with celestial tech and such. Overall, it felt like a really good first chapter, even though it took me a ton of adjusting for me in particular to get into comprehending what was going on in this introduction. It has me very excited for the adventures and unfortunate events we will be inevitably thrown into while following Finn, while also seeing this political game being played out by the Celestial group with their own futuristic sci-fi version of a Game of Thrones. That wraps up my thoughts on the first chapter. Let me know down in the comment section what you think about this introductory chapter, if I missed out on anything important, and if it had you hooked to the book immediately as well. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more chapter by chapter videos like this, along with coverage on everything Exodus like mentioned before. As always, your support through your viewership, liking, and subscribing is always greatly appreciated and helps me out tremendously against the celestial threat that is the YouTube algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to catch you guys next time. Peace!